Hello, hello, welcome back to Portugal and to our small utility room where we have spent quite some time over the last few weeks in preparation for today. Today is a big day for us. We are having our heat pump installed, not by us but by a third-party installer, and we have prepared all the things. We now have electricity in the house. We have running water in the house, and very soon we will have hot running water and heating, which is very exciting because we've not had any of those things for, well, we bought the place 3 years ago and have never had them in the house so far. So we're very excited. We're also absolutely knackered because I think we've had maybe 2 half days off in 21 days, maybe even more. So we're quite tired, but we are very excited for what's going to happen today. Because we've got other people coming in, I don't know how much of it we're going to be able to film, but we'll try and show you as much as we can. But most importantly, at the end, we'll talk about why we've gone for air source heating, why we are doing it purely on solar power, and we'll show you as much of how the system works and how it all fits together as we can. And we'll come back in a separate video and do a big tour of the new solar system, which has had some significant changes and upgrades over the last few weeks, but is now all working nicely and powering our home. We're still off grid, and so there's quite a lot of interesting stuff to talk about from that perspective as well, but we'll put that in a separate video just so we can go into a bit more detail. Anyway, this is what the room looks like now, or this is the corner where the tank is going to go. Let me also show you around here. All of the plumbing stuff is down here, underfloor heating and all of our domestic hot water manifolds. And then up here, we've got all of the solar equipment. So there's a lot going on in this small space, and soon it's going to have even more stuff and even more people in it. So I'm going to get out of the way and let the guys get to work. Our friends from Tu Clima have been, they have gone. They have done some amazing work. We could not be happier with the result, but also the way that they approached the whole project. They were amazing. Everything works. We've got hot water, we've got cold water, we've got electricity, and we have heating. And it's a huge relief. Let's talk you through how all of it works and answer some potential questions. And of course, if you have more questions, we'll try and answer those later on.
So let's start with a question we've already been asked, which is, what is an air source heat pump?
That is a good place to start.
Because it's a common solution in countries where you need lots of indoor heating. So not so common in Australia, which is where the question came from. And the simplest way to explain it is a hot water and heating system that extracts heat from the air outside and transfers that heat to water. That water then is used for your domestic hot water, so taps and sinks, and also for your heating, whether that's radiators or underfloor heating. We've gone for underfloor heating. So there is a unit outside that acts kind of like an air conditioner, but in reverse. So extracts from the air energy or warmth, uses some refrigerant lines, and connects to this tank, which is effectively a hot water tank, transfers the heat from the air to the water. There are also other types. So you can have ground source heat pumps, and that is basically taking the energy or the warmth from the ground rather than from the air, and doing the same thing, then transferring that to water and then using that water in the house for domestic hot water and heating. We chose air source heat pump for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's really, really efficient in this type of climate. So we do have cold winters here, but we don't get below freezing very often, so it performs quite well in the winter. Number two, ground source requires a lot more disruption to your land because you need to run pipes either horizontally in the land or vertically, like a borehole. And that is expensive to do. And if you have established trees, that's very difficult. Great for new builds, but not so great when you have already an established property and land. And air source heat pumps typically can 3x your energy, so they produce 3 times more energy than is required to do the heating. And the data that I've seen for Portugal is very good. We went for Daikin, which is a reckoned-on brand. I did contact Daikin and ask for some data sheets for Portugal, which don't exist. They provided data sheets for their average household, but it's not country specific, and that average household is not defined, so number of people, size of house, usage, etc. So we made the decision based on anecdotal evidence from other people who live in Portugal, and we will see how it works in our situation, because we don't use a lot of hot water. We don't shower every day. What are the other things you use hot water for? Yeah, we don't run a dishwasher every day. We don't run a washing machine, no, not even once a week. So we don't have a high hot water usage. The heating is the one thing that is going to be interesting to watch. And we've done this at this time so that we can get the data for this winter before we do more heating works upstairs.
So as you might be able to tell, Kylie's done quite a lot of research on this, and she knows a lot more than I do about this whole, how all this stuff works. But as she was just explaining what the heat pump is and how it works, I had a question that came to mind, which was, if it takes the heat from the air to heat the water, then what happens in the winter? Surely there's not much heat in the air.
So I think it's a misconception that there is no heat in the air in the wintertime. When you're not sub-zero, which we very seldom are here, in the air is still molecules moving around, and that generates heat. Not heat as we would imagine it, like a temperature, sun on your arm type heat, but it's an energy that can be extracted. So that movement of molecules is generating energy. That energy can be extracted. These type of systems also work with sub-zero temperatures, less efficiently, of course, but it is possible to run a air source heat pump in the snow, for example, because that energy does still exist in the air to be extracted and converted. That's where having a really well insulated property and a really well designed heating system becomes much more important. Here, because we very seldom get below zero, and it's really only overnight, it's not going to be a problem. And I've heard from many people here in Portugal that their system does not struggle. But we have also catered for the winter where there's less energy, less heat, by selecting a system that has a backup option. So this is what's called a bivalent system. It can be hooked up to solar panels to help heat the water, but you have that same problem in winter. We already have a solar system, and winter is the time when there is the least amount of sun. So I wanted a different backup solution. So this is going to connect through this room to the room above to a wood burner that has a back boiler, which the burning of the timber will heat the water. That water will then come down and cycle into this tank via an expansion tank to make sure that the inconsistencies in temperature are evened out. And that will be installed next year, the year after, not too sure. It's called here in Portugal a recuperador.
Something like that, yeah.
And often they're either wood-based or pellet-based. We're choosing wood because we want the ambient effect of having a wood burner in our little snug upstairs. And that also has meant that the cost of this system is a bit higher, having those options to hook into solar or another backup source. But that should get us through all the potential issues with not having enough sun because we're running everything on solar, and the air source heat pump not being able to extract enough warmth or energy out of the air.
So as we mentioned, we're running this entire system off-grid on pure solar photovoltaic panels rather than solar hot water panels, which is an option with this system. So we have made some changes to our solar system. We've scaled it up in a small way for now, and we have the potential for scaling up further in the future. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we'll do a whole separate thing in another video so we can go into a bit more detail. But essentially we have now all of this stuff here in the house. We've got 2 parallel inverters, we've got a few more batteries, and everything has made nice and beautiful and tidy behind all this trunking here, which I'm quite proud of. We'll give you a full rundown of how all of this stuff works in future. But I think what we can do now is kind of walk through how all of this heating and heat pump and underfloor heating stuff all ties together, because it's all here now.
Do a little bit of weeding at the same time. So this is where the magic starts. This is like the reverse air conditioner that I was talking about. It has been mounted on the wall. You can also have it mounted on the ground, but I actually prefer this from being able to get access to underneath to do some weeding. It has made an issue for us to render and paint later.
It's also on an anti-vibration bracket.
Exactly, and we will, depending on how much noise it generates, plant some plants out here to absorb some of that noise as well. We have a whole project to redo the outside, redo this boundary wall, redo the staircase at some time in the future.
And the system is all off at the moment, so it's not making any noise. But when the guys were testing it and powering it up and plugging it in for the first time, of course, we did have the opportunity to listen to how much noise it made, which was very, very quiet indeed. And the amount of power, I don't have specific data on it, but it only took a couple of hours to heat the water up from cold to 45 degrees, which is the temperature that we're setting for now. And it really only took a couple of kilowatt hours of power to do that, which I thought was surprisingly low for 300 litres of water.
This is the pipes that go to the outside. We had pre-drilled a hole and lined it with a PVC pipe. This is all nicely insulated. They've also installed here its own dedicated little consumer unit. We had again provisioned a cable, and then they did all of this. And then before they came, all we had done is provisioned these 4 lines with an isolator on each of them. And I'll roughly explain what happens here. This is a cold water feed, goes into the tank. There's a couple of different, this is a top-up valve. This is a top-up for the underfloor heating should it need bits. There's a pressure relief valve. This is the expansion tank that I was talking about, which is for when we hook up the wood burner upstairs, and that's just because a wood burner isn't going to deliver a constant heat. So you have an expansion vessel that does some magic to equalize the heat before it introduces it into the tank. Out of the tank comes our domestic hot water, so this will go to showers and sinks. And then there is a flow and return up there for the underfloor heating. And if we just come along here, this downward pipes, there's two of them, go to the ground floor underfloor heating, and then we have provisioned for upstairs should we decide to do underfloor heating upstairs, which we'll see if the data suggests that we would need to. And then the other thing that we did well before they got here, which we haven't recorded, is this is all of the, let's call it the central plumbing system. So we have a cold feed that comes in here, comes up and over into here, feeds off into the bathroom, the kitchen, etc., etc. And then this is the hot feed that the tank feeds, and then it goes off again to all of the different rooms. And then, yeah, this comes directly from the tank into the underfloor heating. We are so happy that this is done. We obviously still have all of the plumbing to do in each of the individual rooms. So for example, these are the hot and the cold feed for this utility room. These two lines are the hot and cold feed going into the downstairs toilet. There is a feed that goes down there that we provisioned a long time ago that goes over into the kitchen. Someone also asked a question when we did the floor video, why are we surface mounting these given that we could have hidden them in the wall? And this is why. Because there is so much pipe work here that to put all of this in the wall, and I actually don't think you're allowed to put this kind of plumbing into the wall. Number one is not necessary, and number two, we're going to box it all in. So in the future, these manifolds will be in a cupboard. There will be a sink and a washing machine here. There will be cupboards across here, so you won't see any of the plumbing. You'll have to see this because you need access to it. And you can't really hide an expansion tank. This is a utility room. It's a functioning, all the services room. It is not a pretty bathroom that we're going to bring people into, so it doesn't need to be beautiful.
I don't know, I think I'm going to show off some of the stuff in here.
Yeah. And we still have a little bit of finishing work in here. So this needs to be, these electrics need to be put into some trunking. There's a couple of other bits and pieces of cable that need to be finished. And if Guy shows you, up here, we have the beginnings of a ventilation system and about 2/3 of a ceiling frame for our dropped ceiling. Again, we didn't film that. This room is incredibly difficult to film in. When we did the floor video, there was lots of comments that you didn't get a photo of the finished floor. But let's do that now.
Oh. Yes, we are sorry that we didn't have a wonderful reveal, beautiful shot of the finished tiled floor. There were a couple of reasons for that. The first one being I just forgot to take a big wide shot, but there was also a whole load of other stuff in here that we were trying not to show at the time. Plus it's also a really small room, so it's quite hard to get all of it in. But we will do a big reveal of everything when it's finished, whenever that might be. And of course, we've got lots of other flooring to do, so we'll be able to show you the overall effect in a future room where there's more space and things look a little bit nicer. But yes, sorry, we didn't give you the payoff that perhaps you were wanting in the tiling video.
So one question that I can definitely foresee in the comments, actually let's not call it a question, is an opinion. There will be someone telling us that we cannot run an air source heat pump off-grid. And I really hope that in the future we're able to provide evidence that that is not correct. Because my research suggests that it is not correct, that we don't need 20 kilowatt hours to run an air source heat pump here in Portugal. There is a lot of data and evidence from colder climates where air source heat pumps aren't as efficient and it would be difficult to run them on solar. But we are in Portugal, we have sized our solar system appropriately. So yeah, I look forward to be able to provide that data and evidence of this context in Portugal, in this building, with insulation, with underfloor heating, etc., etc.
One other question that you may have is, how much did all this cost?
So the cost of the indoor unit, the outdoor unit, and the installation and all of the accessories, the electrics, came in at €12,000.
Well, there you go.
That's what it costs. And there are no grants currently available in Portugal. I know the UK has some grants. Sometimes Portugal has some grants, but this is 12,000 flat out that we've paid.
Yeah, and it is definitely worth saying that the guys who came here did an amazing job. They were neat, they were tidy, they labelled everything in English for us. They set the machine up in Portuguese so that they knew how it was all working, but then they changed the language for us so we would understand how it all works. It's all smart home compatible. There's an app that we can monitor how things are going. We can turn the heating on and off remotely from anywhere in the world. In fact, the system's been off for over a week now since the install was finished, and we've had a bit of downtime, which has been very nice. And the tank temperature, the water tank temperature, was 45 degrees when they turned it off. A week later, it's still 32 degrees. We've not used any of the water, but we've also not had it turned on at all. So it's holding its heat really, really well, which is great. But yeah, the guys from Two Cleaners did an amazing job. They were on time every day. They tidied up at the end of every day. We can't say enough good things about them. Very, very happy indeed. And I think that is everything we need to cover. But I'm sure we've missed some things, so if you have questions, put them down below and we will do our best to answer those. And of course, we will continue to bring you all the updates on how the system is going, whether it's working for us, but we are very happy with what we've got here. And I'm very much looking forward to being warm this winter. Okay, so we will leave it there. We will see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.